All right, we are live. Welcome back to another episode of the Agent Revolution podcast, a morning edition presented by Mike Wall Live, the place where we deconstruct the biggest challenges facing today's real estate agent so that they can build a sustainable, profitable, and most of all, fulfilling real estate business. I am super stoked today. I've got my friend, Mr. Ulysses Wang, and we are talking NLP. We are talking about the power of NLP. We're talking about human behavior as it relates to the real estate world. And I thought this was a really important conversation to have this morning because oftentimes in real estate, we feel like we're saying the right things to our clients. We feel like we're doing the right things for them, but we're not always saying them the way they should be said. And so Ulysses this morning has agreed to come on the show. And by the way, he is a master NLP coach. There is no better person to learn from than him. And so you will get a lot of value. In fact, you may want to watch this one or listen to this one just a couple times. Ulysses, are you ready to get started, man?
I'm all ready and super pumped. And first of all, thank you so much, Mike. And for whoever that is watching this right now live with us, good morning, America. And good evening to all my fellow friends over here in Asia, if you're in Asia. Okay, so let's get started, Mike.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I'm super excited. So real quick, one of the things that intrigued me about you when we first met, and by the way, I kind of got to know you a little bit on social media. You do a lot of great marketing on social media. You're an influencer on social media. And that's the way I got introduced to you. And you agreed to come on the show and share your expertise with our audience. But tell the audience a little bit about your past, because that was one of the most intriguing things about you, I think, as I got to know you.
Right. I have a pretty boring past experience, to be honest. And if I could sum up in just a very quick 30 seconds for everybody, is I've graduated from college, stepped into the working world just like any of my peers. The only difference during that point of time was that most of my peers, they went into the some of the more prestigious industry. They went into the financial industry. They went into insurance. They went into oil and gas, petrochemicals. I went into something that I'm not sure about. For other people, but in Asia context, I'm sure most moms wouldn't be very proud of their son doing this job. So I went into telesales. So I graduated with college. My mom has high hopes for me. I applied for my first job, which was a telesales job. I got into it, and I was basically selling stuff over the telephone from 9 to 6, Monday to Friday. Yeah. So that was pretty much my first job. And I did that job for 7 years. And as a matter of fact, that was my first and only job I've done throughout my life. And I did that for 7 years. I thought I knew something. I went into business, started a business doing almost pretty much the same thing. And within the first 8 to 9 months, I got pretty quick success. And I thought I knew about business, right? It's like, I was young. I got a great business running. I made some money, good money. And during 2015, the oil price crisis came. I think it affected everyone around the world who's in the oil and gas energy sector. And my business at the point of time was pretty much dependent on this sector. So almost overnight, a period of like 4 to 5 months, as the oil price came crashing down, my business came crashing down almost instantaneously as well. And what followed over the next few years was really a step back into looking at the very core fundamentals of like human to human relationship for me. And at the point of time, I was starting a family, and there was a lot of pressure with like new apartment, new mortgage loan, and failed business, kid coming along the way. And what I really realized was that none of the technical things in our life really matters that much. When I mean technical things, I mean the like the sales process, the technical thing about doing a phone call or things like Facebook ads, all this sort of technical stuff that we learn in our life. Right. So I think the really core thing I learned during the past few years after the business failure, which got me back into the game, was really about going deep down into understanding human behavior. So that's pretty much my journey to now so far.
Yeah. You know what's really cool about that? I was just having this conversation with our ISA, Dee Dee, yesterday, and because she was concerned that she wasn't getting the number of calls that I expected her to get in.
Right.
But in reality, she was having better quality conversations. And I need people to understand that it's not so much about getting the calls in. It's really about having good quality conversations that lead to a positive result. And in our industry, that might be an appointment to show a house or to list a house, right? And so I just reassured her that, listen, if you're having good quality conversations, it doesn't matter the number of dials because the results will show up, which is ultimately the most important thing anyway. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, because at the end of the day, especially in today's context, just to backtrack a little bit, when I first started my telephone sales career, I mean, if I would call that a career, and what's interesting, we were just being made to do like a set of KPIs, like 115 phone calls a day. We need to reach like 15 decision makers. We're doing corporate sales, so 15 decision makers, and we need to send out info pack about to 10 of them at least, and need to have at least like 4 to 6 of them agreeing for us to give them a call back, or they will call us back. And then we will filter this down to have a specific number of sales every month per sales rep. So we are trained in that like hardcore numbers game logic. But I think in today's world, I agree with you, Mike. The quality of the conversation, I would take that any time of the day, and that's like that outweighs like the number of dials that you will need to make.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And so, in today's world, in our real estate market here in Ohio, specifically, we are in a seller's market. Okay. And what that means is the sellers have all the leverage right now. There's not a lot of inventory. There's high buyer demand. And oftentimes when a home sells, it sells over the list price and in multiple offers. And so, the difficult conversation on the buyer's side is in getting them to believe the brevity of the situation that they're actually in when they've identified a house that they want to live in and move their family in and spend several years of their adult life in this property, which is a big decision. And ultimately, what they don't, that they may only have one shot at this house, right? And so then the conversation becomes extremely important in getting them to do what they not only what you want them to do, but what they need to do if they're going to get this house. And so in a situation like that, Ulysses, how would an agent approach that so that they're able to get their point across and that they're able to get the client to do what's in their best interest so that they win the bid on this house?
I think that's a really great question, Mike. With regards to very specifically to your business, your industry, the real estate business, I think first of all, a disclaimer for everyone: I'm not in the real estate business, so I've never sold any houses before. I'm always on the buyer side. But when we actually take a breakdown into like a deeper look into like a sales process, well, it works whether is it going to be in real estate or any commodity or any products or services, consulting, etc., that anyone is selling. What I feel personally that really matters most is to really have a head start, a very strong head start at the beginning of the process. Now, which is something that's going to be very interesting, which I have prepared like 3 broad concepts that I drew from the area of under the study of neuro-linguistics programming, NLP, that I think is going to benefit any sales professionals, especially people in the real estate business, that will be able to create some leverage for themselves as much as possible in the earlier part of the sales process. So that is something that I want to really dive deep into with you, Mike, with regards to like the point that you have just brought up.
I think that's a great idea. And before we actually answer that question about that specific sales scenario, tell everybody a little bit about what NLP stands for and what it is.
Well, neuro-linguistics programming, well, that is something, it's a term that's been coined around the 1970s. So plus minus is about coming to 50 years, thereabout 50 years. So during that point of time, for anybody who wants to actually, geek out about NLP, there's a lot of reading materials online. But to really summarize this, it's really not a specific area of study. So most people will have mistaken that NLP is actually like a very specialized field of study by itself. Like for example, like marketing or sales or accounting. These are very specialized area. So NLP is really not like an area. In fact, NLP is really taken out from like a series, right? A broad area of proven processes, structures, techniques, strategies in many different areas: psychology, human behaviors, therapy, linguistics, strategy in terms of mindset. And it's really taken off from many different areas and being put into like one huge area, which is what is commonly known as neuro-linguistics programming.
Yeah.
So on a nutshell, I think what most people will really gain the most benefit from is really to look at NLP in terms of modeling success, right? So it could be modeling a specific process. It could be modeling a specific overachiever. It could be modeling someone who has achieved something that you have not yet achieved, but you are looking forward to achieve. So it's really about like modeling things that has already worked. And there are specific steps within it that has been proven again and again by many people around the world that is probably the easiest and fastest way to get to a specific result.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And again, it's so impactful in real estate, like I said, because it can be the difference between somebody getting the house that they want and then having to settle for their second or third pick and learning the hard way, right? And that's why when I set up this particular scenario, again, being a buyer in our market today is extremely difficult, and most agents would agree with that. That when you are getting a buyer to commit to making an offer on a specific property that perhaps 3, 4, 5, 10 other buyers may be interested in, the impact of the conversation becomes extremely important in that they need to understand that if they want to win the bid on this house, that they really ought to do what you say, and that we're coming from a place of experience. And oftentimes, real estate agents have difficulty being able to commute that or communicate that in a way so that the buyer receives it and then implements your advice and goes out and wins the bid on that house. So,
right.
Talk me through that. Like, what does that mean? What is that part of the conversation when you're dealing with a buyer that you need them to do what it's in their best interest in order to win the bid? How do you start a conversation, or what are some of the important things you might do with or during the conversation with that buyer?
Right. Let me just touch on this real quick in terms of like when we are already actually in a conversation with someone. Mm-hmm. Right, so it could be a potential buyer in this instance that you mentioned. But what is more interesting is to really think about what happens before we step into the conversation. But let's just touch on the surface real quick about when we are in the conversation itself. So there's really a couple of really interesting things that I think most real estate agents, because this is predominantly a very face-to-face role. Mm-hmm. All right. So this is probably also like the biggest advantage in this particular industry as compared to online selling, telesales, or many other types of sales processes. So because of the fact that we get to see a person face to face, now that is like the biggest advantage ever, in my opinion. Now, what is a very common mistake of most sales reps will be that they over focus on themselves, because we were taught about like how we should present, how we should look, how we should smile, and what kind of things we should really start off a conversation. Should we start off with a good morning, or should we actually start off with a compliment, or should we just straight away jump into like the meat of the conversation? So a lot of time, most people are overly focused on ourselves. Now let's just take a step back, Mike, and look at these like two person, just like two imaginary person A and person B. Right? It doesn't matter who is the seller or who is the buyer. It's just about two person. Now, any one of us, including you, including me, including everybody else on this planet, when we get into a conversation, the only thing that we really care about is obviously ourselves.
Right.
We will never care. We will never care so much. I mean, we will pay attention to. Now, there's a difference between paying attention and what we truly care about.
Sure.
So that's like a huge difference. And if we are able to just shift our focus onto the other person, and when I mean that, I mean very tactically. I mean, for example, what are the words they are using, and what kind of gestures they are actually expressing, and what kind of like body posture. Right, we'll go deep into that because that forms like a huge part of rapport building. But at this point of time, we want to take note of like things that is very unconscious, right? Which is what like most people would probably not like pay attention to, because we are more concerned with like the conscious part of like what they are saying, like the words itself. But most of the time, what I would really pay attention to is really the unconscious behavior, which they don't even know that they are exhibiting certain behaviors, like certain words that they say, certain gestures that they make. Example, as I said, certain body language and certain like movement of them. It all tells us a lot about things about them at a point of time. So what I really recommend for anyone who is in a face-to-face role, it can be sales, it can be anything, right? Or maybe just basically opening your door in the morning and talking to your neighbors, right? And really pay attention to themselves. And that is like the greatest gift, God has given to us, the ability to be able to observe and calibrate later on. But we'll move into very tactical things later on when we, frame out some scenarios.
Sure.
Yeah.
So one thing you said that really stood out to me, and I hope everybody picked up on this, is the fact that in real estate, we do have a distinct advantage to be able to be in front of the client. And that's so much more impactful than emailing back and forth or even talking with somebody on the phone back and forth. And I also know in real estate, because I'm guilty of this myself, is that while it's easier to email somebody or just call them on the phone, it's also creating a disadvantage for you when you want to go and have a conversation to try to influence a buyer, because there are certain things that they can't see, and there are certain things that are easier to do, like say no, right?
Yeah.
Over the phone or via email, that people oftentimes will not do if you are in person. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. And because of the fact that we are just like lowering down the resistance level to say no to us, like what you said, like it's so much easier to just reply via text. No, I'm not interested, or no, I need to talk to my wife or my husband, my boyfriend or girlfriend or somebody. It's so easy for them to just push the rep away. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Okay. And so in the scenario where you're at the point to where your buyer's ready to make an offer, let's say, hey, buyer, you go show a house, buyer says, I'm going to talk to my husband about it, and then we're going to call you later. They call you back and they say, hey, you know what? We're interested in this house. This is our number one pick. You then say, great, let's schedule an appointment to get back together and discuss this as soon as possible, knowing the type of market that we're in, right? And even if you have to go to them or schedule an appointment for them to come to you, either way, you need to be able to get in front of that person, correct?
That's right. I think that is so important for real estate, to really be able to like physically present like the property right in front of their eyes, because it's not something that we pick up at 7-Eleven. It is something that's big ticket. For most people, it's a lifetime investment. So yeah, it's extremely important to have that.
Perfect. And so, okay, so now I've got the appointment. I arrive at the buyer's house. I'm sitting down in front of them, and the scenario is this is a house that's just come on the market. It's priced at $225,000. I know that in this market that houses are selling for at or above listing price, and I approach the buyer and I say, hey, listen, here's the type of market we're in, right? And then I also bring some supporting evidence. And I say, in your neighborhood, in this neighborhood where your number one pick is, the last 5 homes that have sold at or above list price. And here they are, right? Here's option A, B, C, D, E. and so you provide that supporting evidence. And then what are some other things? What are some of the intricacies of that conversation and how that needs to be approached, so that you can get the buyer on or thinking like you're thinking?
Right. I believe that I personally practice this day in, day out to really push all the focus to as front of any process. So in this example, we are talking about a sales process. Mm-hmm. So meeting a potential buyer or even a potential seller, that's pretty much at a beginning of the process. But now, if we just think about it from a more larger perspective, we are essentially doing one thing. We are trying to influence another person or group of people towards a certain direction that we will actually like them to go towards. Right. Yeah. So now, what I would like to do is I often do, and also I recommend everybody to do, is very good practice, is this very broad level concept of pre-framing. So pre-framing essentially is, like we all judge, we were all told that we don't judge a book by its cover, right? Right. You know what I'm saying? So, well, you know what, that is correct. And you know what is even more correct, Mike, is that we always judge a book by its cover. That is essentially, it's a human nature. Right. So, in my opinion, instead of fighting against human nature, which we know, is a tough one, we would rather, right, go with it and, take advantage of this very specific human nature, of course, again, for ethical reasons, and to really see what we can really achieve a win-win situation. So a concept of pre-framing essentially is like what I call the things that we need to do before an activity takes place that gets us to a specific result. Yeah. So let me just repeat this real quick. So it's the things that we do before a set of activity that gets us to a specific result. So in this case, the set of activity will be to negotiate with either the buyer or seller, and the result is that we want the seller to list and we want the buyer to buy. All right. So that is the specific result. So what most people will do is that they will jump straight into that activity, right, the set of activity, and do everything they can while in that activity to get that result. Well, that is good. That is good. But what if we are able to already start to nudge or push or influence the stakeholders in this set of activities already moving towards the direction that we want them to before we even step into this set of activity itself? So essentially that area, all right, what comes before we step into the activity is called a concept called pre-framing. So pre-framing is pretty much powerful because it really frames the other person's mind and already get them to start thinking about a certain direction before we even start to have the first conversation with them face to face. Now, let's put it into a more tactical level, because I think that is going to be the most important thing at the end of the day for everybody who is, on this show, watching it live right now, or listening to the podcast later on. And to put it into a rather much more tactical level. Now, think about what needs to be done before you meet that person. Right, specifically, what does that person, depending again whether it's a buyer or seller, now what does the person need to see, hear, or feel so that they will start moving towards that direction you want them to go? So, for example, if we are going to meet a potential seller, so a person who is potentially has property and he may be thinking about listing. So, what is the thing that is going to nudge him or her towards like wanting to list with us almost immediately? Now, for example, he will need to know that the property market right now, again, help me on this, Mike, because I'm not a real estate professional over here. So I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe the seller will need to know that the market is not doing very well right now. And if he or she doesn't sell right now, it's going to be even worse in the next 12 months or so, for example. Yeah. Maybe the person needs to know that there are a lot of buyers right now and who have a wide variety of choices that gives them pressure. Maybe they need to know that there's going to be some unforeseen potential projects coming up around their estate or their neighborhood, which is going to impact negatively on the sale price of their property. So, for example, all this. So, how can we already put all this right in front of the other person, so that they're able to see, hear, or feel this. So when we get into the conversation, look at how powerful this is. Their mind is already with the frame that, I better do this.
Yeah.
All right. So that is a very broad level concept of pre-framing. Yeah.
So essentially what you're saying is you're creating urgency, right? And what I've always found is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that emotion drives action. And
Always.
and so in a situation where, when you talk about pre-framing, to me, it sounds like this. In a scenario where you're trying to get a buyer to make a really aggressive offer, is you're going back and you're really tugging at those emotional strings, saying, why is it important that you find a house? Like, what is driving the move? And in sort of pouring salt in the wound, so to speak, of it's not so much about the offer, it's more about why you're making the move, and really driving home the point that we could potentially lose this house if we don't make our best offer, and we don't want to lose this house. Why? Because this is where you and your family are going to spend the next 5 to 10 years in building memories and kids kids' birthdays and all of these things that really drive emotion, where the fear of maybe the amount of money that's being invested subsides a little bit, because the emotion is starting to take over and sort of drive the boat.
You got it right, actually, Mike, because at the end of the day, what we are really trying to really focus on influencing is really not so much of the conscious part of our mind, not so much about like how much is it, what is the price, all this kind of analytical stuff. But what we are really trying to influence at a very deep level, is really the emotions, right? The emotions of because that drives behaviors. Right. So, everybody can relate. We do stupid things when we are angry, and we make all the best decisions of our life when we are in a calm, peaceful, happy state. But we do all the stupid things in our life when we were either we were drunk, or we were feeling really angry or frustrated or something. We say all the terrible things in our life. So emotion is really the thing that we're trying to influence at the end of the day. And pre-framing will allow someone to actually influence that part of a person's unconscious mind, right? The emotional part, even before we start to get in contact with them.
Right. And so I would venture to guess that many agents, many salespeople for that matter, they leave this part out, right? And they go right into, hey, what would you like to offer for the house, right? And at that point, you're kind of dead in the water, or you're going to be backtracking for most of the conversation if you don't get the answer you want. And let's say the buyer comes in and they say, hey, we're going to offer $200,000 on this $225,000 house, and there's other interest, and at that point that you've not done a good job in educating the buyer as to the brevity of the situation that they're in. Correct?
Yeah, that is correct, and it happens with most sales rep. Again, regardless of face-to-face or telesales, retail, online, most people would depend on the actual sales process itself to do its magic. Well, sales process works, and I'm sure like most real estate agents out there, they have received some form of training, and they have a sales process that has been delivered results for their seniors over the years, and they just use this sales process, which is great, by the way. But the thing to really challenge individuals to really take their game to a whole new level is, how can we make this sales process stronger, more effective, and less energy consuming? What I'm saying? Now, what I feel is that most reputable firms out there, they have done everything they can. Well, not everything they can, right? Most of the things that they can in strengthening the sales process already. How many calls you should make, what is the script that you should be using, even down to the details of what are the opening phrases, as I said just now.
Right.
Now, the thing to really improve on is how can we already start to influence people even before sales process begin, or at least the very initial part of the sales process. You quoted a very good example just now, Mike, when you say when a buyer comes into a conversation offering $200,000 for $250,000 property, and that is like we are fighting an uphill battle already, because the person has already a fixed number. And so what we are trying to do in that situation is really trying to negotiate or haggle with the person. Okay, I want 250, you want 200, let's meet somewhere in between, or kind of things. But what we really want to pay attention and focus is before the person even has the $200,000 figure in his mind.
Yeah. And I love, because what comes to mind for me is that, really what you want to do, or what you want to be able to educate the buyer so much in that situation that they arrive at the destination themselves. In other words, you've educated them so well that you go to say, hey, what would you like to offer? If the house is priced at $225,000, they're saying $240,000, right? Because you've done such a good job educating them as to during that pre-framing process that they know that this market is this market is very competitive, and we've got to come with our best foot forward, right? So really, I mean, the overall context of this is educating a buyer, pre-framing it so that they arrive at the result themselves. You're not telling them what to offer. They arrive there themselves. And so it seems like so much of a better idea when it comes from them, right?
Exactly. I mean, the best form of answers is always the one that, we derive it ourselves, because that is the one that we, without any influence, is our own decision. That's always the best answer.
Right. And unbeknownst to them, you've really helped them arrive at that decision, because you've done such a good job in the pre-framing, setting it up that that they felt compelled to say whatever they said because of the information that you provided. So, man, what's so cool about this is, I was in sales. I've been in sales my whole life, man. And like you're a young kid. You're very eager. You don't care so much about the intricacies or the processes of the sale. You just care more about the result. And where you fail so much as a youngster is, you're right. You're just concerned about making the sale. You're really, and I tell my sales team about this all the time, is you're concerned about getting something from the buyer or seller, right? You want a result, and it's you. And if in what I realized as I went through this is there was a paradigm shift. And when I had that paradigm shift and I realized it was about them, right? I came from a place of giving instead of trying to get. My sales career totally shifted, right? And it became infinitely more impactful when I had conversations and I came from a place of giving versus versus getting.
That's right. I think when anyone who is able to let the other party or the other person feel that like we are giving and they are receiving, that is like half the job done most of the time. Right. The challenge facing most sales professionals is that besides the stigma that consumers has, is like, oh, I'm meeting a salesperson, he's going to get something from me, right? Well, that is something that they already have. So we really need to reduce the resistance or minimize it at least, so that they at least feel that we are there to give and not ask, at least at the beginning. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
It's a great point, man. And what most young people like myself back then don't understand is that the person in control of the conversation is the person asking questions. See, oftentimes we think the person talking is the person in control, when in reality, they're just responding to whatever the response was from, the person they were talking to. And in this case, if you're doing all the talking as the real estate agent, you're just thinking about what you want to try and get across. You're not thinking about them. And so when you're talking about pre-framing, it really is a series of asking good questions and then educating to the direction you want that particular prospect to go, right?
That's right. I think you and me, we probably come from almost very similar school of thought in terms of our sales career at the beginning part of our life, where like what you said just now, like the person who is asking questions is the one who is in control. And I remember my sales director would tell me that you need to be in control. You need to ask questions. You need to qualify them. Da 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 da. And I think as I move along in my life, I don't know whether is it because of an era shift or or just because as we grow older we start to think a lot differently. That's just not the case. I would take a conversation with anyone today that they do 99% of the talking. I would just respond accordingly in the 1%. I'll take that conversation anytime now today.
Agreed.
Right.
So kind of going back through some of this. So the big advantage obviously is being in front of the client, right? That is so much more impactful than sending an email, certainly, or even being on the other end of a telephone. And then pre-framing, right? Emotion drives action, right? Pre-framing, educating, to get the buyer or seller to make the decision that you want them. The whole pre-framing part of the process is getting the buyer or seller to make the decision that you would have typically told them to make, but they're coming to the conclusion on their own, right? Is there anything else in the process that we've missed that I haven't, been able to speak on?
I think there are two things that is really critical for anyone to take note on to stir into this entire pre-framing. But before that, I want to give everyone some really interesting examples of pre-framings that I've seen. One of it I use, and some of it I've seen people in different industry. But that's just to throw out some ideas, because the concept works. There is no doubt about that. Is how we are able to tweak certain tactical execution with regards to different industry. Let me just give you one interesting example. I know a corporate client of mine who is having a business meeting to sign a really great deal for corporate purchase. So they had this meeting at a hotel, hotel lounge. So the buyer, the purchaser, which is a client, flew in a night before from another state to stay one night at the hotel and have a meeting in the morning, make the decision, sign off, or maybe not sign off, and then is going to leave the hotel and go back to his office. So what the client of mine did, he's the seller, he's on the seller side, was that he bought all the elevator advertisement, when we actually enter into elevators of hotels, and they will usually have this small little advertising. And he bought all the advertisement in all the elevators in the hotel, and specifically putting out information about his company. And now he doesn't put any other information. He only puts like his client's testimonial. So you enter, like, for example, elevator A, you will see testimonial A by this vice president of this company saying something good about this company, which is obviously his company. And the buyer that he's supposed to meet will definitely catch this, because he will probably need to go through the elevator at least 2 times before he meet this particular seller. So I thought that was interesting, because it really created in a frame of mind of the person that people are saying good things about the seller. So I think that's so powerful, because most of the time we will tell people our testimonials. For example, Mike, look, this is Mr. Tan and Mrs. Lim. They are my previous client. This is what they say about me. So most of the time we do these things, right? But if the buyer is able to see this without you talking about it, I think that is so powerful. That is very powerful by itself. And I thought that is really interesting. And to really take this whole pre-framing concept and really blow it up for everybody, especially in the real estate business, I think one of the very deep areas of study which has totally changed the way I communicate and to really take my game of influence to a whole new level is to understand this thing. Well, first of all, it's a very technical term. It's called the primary representational system. Okay, now it doesn't mean anything, because first of all, it's a very technical NLP term. What this really means is that every one of us, we have a preferred dominant sense that we actually activate unconsciously. We don't even know about it. That process information. We have this preference. Now, let me just ask you a really interesting question, Mike. Now, if you were to consume a piece of content, for example, something like NLP, for example,
right?
I'm gonna give you like 3 choices, right? Choice A, I'm gonna all these choices have the exact same content. So first choice is that you will be given a book. All right. So with a book, obviously you need to read. Second is that you will actually be given an MP3 audio file. This is kind of like a podcast, so it's an audio file for you to listen to.
Yeah.
And third is a video that you need to click play and sit there and watch it.
Right.
Now, just on a gut feel, which one would you prefer without any consideration for cost or all the sort of things?
Probably the video.
You take the video?
More than likely.
Okay. Right. So you probably like to consume content through video because you can visually see something. Maybe at the same time you're able to listen to something as well. Now this is another more interesting question. If I'm going to take the video out, all right, and replace it with a live event, all right, so a seminar where you need to physically go to a seminar room to listen to the instructor for maybe half a day kind of thing. Again, no cost consideration needed. So which one would you do? The book, the audio file, or the live seminar?
It's so interesting because like if I'm really if I really want to learn about something, like if I'm really committed to it, I'm probably going to choose the live event. But if it's something that I'm just curious about and I'm doing my research to know if I would want to go to a live event, I would probably just consume the podcast or the audio file.
Interesting. Notice how the two scenario you have conveniently omitted the book.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, it may not be a book, a thick book. It may just be a 15 pages PDF file, but you have conveniently omitted that. So now from that, it gives me a lot of information about you. Now, if I am going to be a salesperson, a sales rep, and you are a person, let's just take, for example, you are a potential property buyer.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how are all this information going to be useful for me? First of all, I will never send you a brochure. I will send, but that's not going to be my emphasis. I will not send you a brochure. I will not send you a colorful PDF. All right, that's the first thing I will do. Second of all, I will probably would want to meet you up personally to do this. Now, most real estate professionals will argue on the fact that we need to buy property based on actual viewing, right? Now, let me just ask you an honest question, Mike. Have you ever closed any property deals without the buyer visiting the property?
Yeah.
And that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
How
I bought property myself without ever seeing it.
Exactly. You see, and you know what? You are talking to this person as well right now, because I remember when I bought my first apartment. I was overseas and the launch was coming, and my spouse called me out and said, "Do we want to buy this property? Because we have been like eyeing for a property that we want to own for a long time." And I said, "Okay, could you actually go to the show flat and take a video of it and then just let me show it to me?" And then she did it. She popped it to me over WhatsApp. I look at the video. She sent me some statistics, how much was the floor area, all these kind of things. And then we make a decision there and there on the spot. I said, let's buy it. Let's buy it. And then I remember the morning when we actually queue up for our purchase. All right, the turn for us to actually do the transaction. And I believe it's pretty similar for apartments, for high rise in different parts of the world. So the higher you go, the more expensive it gets, right? And the different site where you view is also going to decide the pricing. So obviously, I already know which side I want to face. I want to face this side and not this side. And I know exactly my budget because I've calculated like what is my mortgage, what is the amount of money I can afford, And I just go on to that replica thing that they have and look at this and look at the big whiteboard they have on the wall and say, I want to go to level 6, level 7, level 8, level 9, level 10, level 10, that's out of our budget. Let's go down one more, level 9 on this side. Okay, I want this unit. And deal was closed. And after that, I asked the sales rep, could I take a minute to look at your show flat? And the person said, you mean, sir, you haven't visited the show flat and you actually bought an apartment? I said, yeah, that's how we buy things. Yeah. But yeah, that's so interesting because some people will make decisions based on that. But the big question over here, I think it's going to bring enormous value for everyone is, how are we able to know the other person's preferred mode of consuming information and processing.
Yeah.
So largely we have like 4 broad categories. Just real quick, we have the people who are very visually oriented.
Yep.
So these people, they will see that they like to read books, they like to imagine. Like these are the people who typically they can actually buy clothing without physically trying them on.
Yeah.
So they can go to the online store, look at this shirt, and they can imagine themselves like wearing it. So these are the people that, in a conversation, it's really nice to ask them things like, could you imagine yourself sitting at a balcony looking at the ocean, at sunset every day?
Yeah.
Best question ever, because they will automatically float their mind to that particular place on the balcony or the patio. But for another person, it may not be the case. So there's another kind of people who are very auditory oriented, which is that they like to listen. So things that sounds like good to them, they come out of like activated most of the time by sound. They like to consume information, process things like through auditory, but it doesn't mean that they can't see, obviously. It's just that it's an automatic thing that they are more dominant on hearing. And we have the people who are kinesthetic. And I have a gut feel that maybe Mike, you belong half on the kinesthetic side. Okay, but let me tell you, that was the other half. So kinesthetic means that person who are they make decision based more on emotions, which means what feels right.
Right.
So a lot of time we go by things like gut feeling. Just like in your business, Mike, have you met anyone who make a decision just based purely on gut feeling, without even knowing how much mortgage loan they can get, without even bring their spouse to the property? Have you met such buyers before? Just gut feeling.
Man, if I have, they're few and far between, my friend.
Yeah. Okay. So the point is that they're rare, and when we meet such people, we want to capitalize on those sort of things. But obviously, people who visit properties, they know they have a certain spending ability already. I mean, they're kind of committed to buy a property. The last one is really this is the really interesting part. In the world of NLP, we call this the AD. Right, as in alpha delta, but what it means is auditory digital. What this is really about this sort of people, which is quite a fair bit of population on this planet that we live in, by the way. They talk to themselves a lot. When I mean talk to themselves, it doesn't mean anything bad. What I mean is that they are processing a lot of thoughts all the time. So they are always analyzing, is this good or bad? What is the ROI for me? What is the returns? What is the rental yield? Am I able to sell this off in the next 3 years or 5 years? And what if I got a kid in the next 5 years? Would I be able to go? All these kind of things comes to their mind when they actually process information. So my bet and my guess is that, Mike, you are, having a kind of split between, well, again, just based on this conversation, all right, between the kinesthetic and also the AD.
Yeah.
All right. So do you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that.
All right, and this is just based on that one question that we just had an example. Like, would you prefer to read a book, a podcast, attend a seminar? And you mentioned very specifically, if you really want to get something interesting, something, you will go for the live seminar. So for a person like this, if you're able to like capture certain cues, the words that they say, then that, I think, for the sales professional, the rep, that's going to be so powerful. Because if I want to close you, Mike, for example, first of all, I need to meet you. I need you to experience the physical, all right, the emotional part about being at a physical location. In this case, a property. I need you to be there. Brochure doesn't work for you. Asking you to visualize, it's okay, but it doesn't really motivate you that much. But I need you to be there. And when you are there, the next thing that I want to focus on is to really package up the pitch, all right, in a very analytical way. All right. So, for example, Mr. Wall, thank you so much for coming here today to this ABC property. First of all, I want to let you know that this is a 6-year-old property. Yes, current rental yield of 3.5%. And over the next 10 years, we are looking at a projected growth of so many percent. And last month, the state government has just announced a new shopping mall is going to be built across the road, which only means that our rental yield is going to even increase much further at a projected. I'm going to talk about all these kind of things with you, and focus on it. So I thought that is like something very, very powerful, and for anyone to actually pick it up and learn.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. Well, I know we're up against the clock, brother. It's 10:50. You're in Singapore, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
And I know you're probably chomping at the bit to share some more. And quite honestly, I could spend another hour with you here. I think what people need to know, though, Ulysses, is you have a program actually that dives a little bit deeper, or actually probably a lot deeper into the whole NLP mastery thing. Can you talk a little bit about that before we jump off here?
Sure. I think the entire study of NLP is so deep, and you and me, Mike, we can actually talk for days nonstop, just digging on this topic on how to put it on a very much practical level. For anyone who wants to go really deep at their own pace, we have a self-paced home study program, which is the NLP Mind Mastery Method program. So you can go to any URL, any browser, and type in the URL bar nlpmindmasterymethod.com. Okay. So that is nlpmindmasterymethod.com, and there's a page describing like what the product is, and it is only $37, completely self-paced, and it has more than like 12 hours of video and audio content for anyone who wants to dive deeper into.
Awesome. And can you drop that into the comments section when we're done, and just make sure people can get there?
Definitely.
Well, Ulysses, again, man, thank you so much. Gosh, this has just been an incredible conversation. I've enjoyed it so much. And again, getting an opportunity to know you and being able to experience, before I, close it, I just, what's interesting is a lot of this stuff I've already been doing unconsciously, and I didn't even know it. And it's not that it's that it's been trial by fire, right? I understand what doesn't work, and I'm getting to know what does work a little bit better. And so it's interesting to know I'm on the right path. I've so enjoyed meeting you. I've so enjoyed the show. It's probably one of my favorite shows I've done probably this year. But I hope people reach out to you. I hope people, want to get to know NLP and the impact that it can have in their sales business. I appreciate you spending some time with us today. As usual, I love sharing these stories week after week, because I know this show is literally changing agents' financial lives, my own included. Do me a big favor. If you enjoy the podcast, please go to wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. Don't forget that if you want free real estate business training, in fact, I've got 8 hours worth of free real estate business training over at MikeWallLive.com. And if you want to meet with me one-on-one for 30 minutes to talk about your real estate business, or just ask me questions, you can get me at meetmikewall.com. For Ulysses Wang, this is Mike Wall, and we are signing off. Ulysses, thank you so much, man.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having me. And it's a pleasure to be able to serve you and your audience on your show. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.